Hello, and welcome to the 23rd episode of my Failed Franchises Rail Operators series, and episode 1 of my Wales Franchises mini-series. In this series, I look at defunct rail operators and conclude whether or not they should be deemed as a failure. Today, we are looking at 3 different Welsh operators: Valley Lines, Wales and West, and Wales and Borders. Today we're looking at 3 different operators because they were all very short-lived, and were also all pivotal to the Welsh franchise that we have today. Do like, subscribe, and consider joining the channel for exclusive perks. Thank you. We go back to 1996 when British Rail was being privatised under the John Major government. The government was stumped on what to do with Wales. Should they create a joint Welsh franchise or split Welsh services into several different companies? They chose the latter, with Valley Lines, Wales and West, First North Western and Central Trains all being the main regional Welsh operators, whilst Great Western Trains and Virgin Cross Country would provide intercity services into Wales. I've already covered Central and Virgin Cross Country and plan to cover Great Western and First North Western at a later date. But today we will start with focusing on the first 2 operators I mentioned, Valley Lines and Wales and West. We'll start with Valley Lines, who would trade under the Cardiff Railway Company name. The franchise was first owned by Prison Rail, who would run services on the 4 northern Valley Lines in Cardiff to Aberdare, Merthyr Tydfil, Rhymney and Dreherbert, whilst also running services south through Cardiff Queen Street to Cardiff Bay, as well as through Cardiff Central to Penarth and Barry Island. Valley Lines would also run services on the City Line from Corwyton to Rhayader via Cardiff Central and Ninian Park. It's important to note that the current term for Valley Lines includes the Vale of Glamorgan Line and the Ebb Vale Line, which neither, at the time, had passenger services after services were withdrawn in the 1960s. Valley Lines initially promised a new regional service from Pontypridd to Manchester or Portsmouth, which was sadly never undertaken. As for rolling stock, Valley Lines would inherit a fleet of sprinters and pacers, including 15 Class 142 pacers, 14 Class 143 pacers, and 6 Class 150 sprinters, as well as Mark II carriages hauled by Class 37s and Class 50s for services along the Rhymney Line due to a lack of stock. Valley Lines began operations on the 13th of October 1996. On the same day, Wales and West began operations, also managed by Prison Rail. This operator was formed to keep Great Western Trains as a purely intercity operator, and would operate all the regional and commuter services along the west of England, including in Avonmouth, Bristol, Cornwall, Devon and Somerset. For Wales, they would operate services towards the north of Wales, and services to Pembrokeshire, such as to Swansea or Pembroke Dock. They would, under the Alpha-Line branding, also run some services to London, Waterloo, Portsmouth and Liverpool. As for rolling stock, Wales and West inherited Class 143s, Class 150s, Class 153s and Class 158s, maintaining their stock at Cardiff and Exeter. Wales and West retained the regional railways Alpha-Line branding for longer distance services operated by its Class 158s, such as those from Bristol to Waterloo and Portsmouth. Wales and West wanted to ensure that the 158s were the flagship class of their fleet, so undertook a refurbishment of all 78 vehicles. This included new carpets, internal repaints, upgrades to air conditioning, new seats and a new layout to include more table seats. Wales and West also focused on safety, trialling safety strips along the carriage aisles, similar to those of airlines, as well as installing emergency exit signs above doorways and automated safety announcements. Wales and West also undertook a hugely ambitious project of equipping every station it operated with new passenger information systems. Although this cost far more than Wales and West were anticipating, they completed the project, with even remote stations such as Sugarloaf on the Heart of Wales line receiving new display systems. Wales and West also promised several other upgrades to its network, including raising punctuality to 92% from 90% and reliability to 99.5% from 99%. Other upgrades included the addition of more waiting shelters at stations, security systems, and restaffing 7 different stations which lost permanent staff under British Rail. Back to the Valley Lines, and, for them, it was not the best of starts. By 1999, the Office of Passenger Rail Franchising had revealed that the performance by the Valley Lines operator and other operators across the UK were getting worse, and were severely underperforming compared to before privatisation. Complaints had been rising, and by September 1999, Valley Lines were given the title of the worst operator in the UK, languishing in the bottom tier of reliability and punctuality, along with Virgin Cross Country, despite Valley Lines operating one of the smallest franchises in the UK, versus Virgin Cross Country operating one of the largest. Rail regulator Tom Windsor revealed that Valley Lines had received 1,873 written complaints in the past year, with delays increasing by 5% in the last year, 8.2% since taking over the franchise. All this whilst many other operators were improving, including Wales and West, who were on a B grade for punctuality, the second highest. Whilst this was going on, Wales and West were experimenting with their branding and identity. At first, they used the South Wales and West logo on their trains to replace the Regional Railways logo. However, we're now looking at developing their own livery. 158867 was given a new dedicated livery with a new Wales and West logo of a rail junction in the early 2000s. The new livery featured blues and orange, with a grey underlivery and was, well, quite ugly in my opinion. Contrast that with Valley Lines and their rather chic greens, reds and creams. However, this was all in vain, as neither operator would exist after 2001. In June 2000, the Strategic Rail Authority confirmed that it would revitalise the network, with Wales finally becoming a joint single franchise to make services compatible with one another, allowing for the most seamless travel across the country. Strategic Rail Authority Chairman Sir Alistair Morton confirmed that the new Wales and Borders franchise would be created to improve services, not just change them for change's sake. The franchise would mean that the Wales and West and Valley Lines franchises would be handed back by Prison Rail to the Department for Transport, being the first time a franchise would ever be handed back to the DFT. However, at first, the new Wales and Borders franchise would be incomplete, with Central Trains' operations along the Cambrian coast and First North Western's operations along the North Wales coast not being merged with the new Wales and Borders franchise. This new franchise would begin in October 2001, with Wales and West services being split into the Wales and Borders and Wessex Trains companies. Just before the new franchise came into operation, Prison Rail, who operated both Wales and West and Valley Lines, were brought out by National Express, with the new Wales and Borders franchise also being operated by National Express, after winning the franchise from 4 shortlisted bidders of Arriva, First Group, National Express and Serco. And, on the 14th of October 2001, Wales and Borders trains began operations on a 2-year contract, using the same logo as Wales and West. Wales and Borders would also keep the Wales and West Alpha Line branding for its mainline regional services, whilst also keeping Valley Lines branding for services in the capital. Some of the Class 158s were given a fresh look in an all-silver livery with a white Alpha Line logo along the centre of each carriage, with blue Wales and Borders coloured doors. Wales and Borders would inherit all of the Class 142s, 143s and 150s from Valley Lines, as well as some of the Class 158s from Wales and West. Wales and Borders would keep running services to Penzance, Waterloo, Birmingham, Manchester and Liverpool, as well as taking over all services from Central Trains from December 2001 towards Pwllheli and Aberystwyth, and some First North Western services towards Holyhead. The new franchise would also see Wales and Borders inherit the Class 175s from First North Western after merging the company by 2003. Before this merger, Dominic Booth, Managing Director of the National Express rail sector, suggested he felt the pain of passengers slating privatisation, suggesting larger franchises like the Joint Anglian franchise and Wales franchise would allow for better integration between commuter, regional and intercity services. By January 2002, the Strategic Rail Authority were looking ahead at the next franchise, which would include management of all stations in Wales, including that of First North Westerns. Arriva, GB Rail and Connex, National Express, and finally Serco and Netherlands Railway had all been shortlisted for the new franchise, which would last for 15 years. Nick Newton, CEO of the Strategic Rail Authority, said that they had 4 strong contenders, which would take through the next stage of the tendering process for the new all-Wales rail franchise. The franchise would give certainty to passengers throughout the area and would also provide the services and benefits that they deserved. Elsewhere, figures released by the Strategic Rail Authority highlighted how Wales and Borders had relatively strong reliability versus rival operators, equalling Wessex Trains' 83% and just below First North Western's 84.1%. They were, however, much stronger than similarly sized Central Trains, who had 77.2%, whilst fellow National Express operator West Anglia Great Northern languished on 69%. By September 2003, Wales and Borders had begun taking full control over the Welsh services of First North Western, including to Manchester Airport, in preparation for the franchise to be extended or handed over in 2003. With this they inherited Class 153s and Class 175s. On the 1st of August 2003, it was confirmed that Arriva Trains Limited had been selected to operate the new Wales and Borders franchise under the Arriva Trains Wales brand name. Services would commence from December 2003 and would last up to 15 years. The new operator would include 7 Class 150 DMUs to replace some of the Mark II rolling stock, whilst 30 new train bus tickets would be introduced. As well as this, there would be a focus on the Welsh language, with bilingual signs being required and a new Welsh language customer helpline set up, with all the timetables accessible in Welsh and English. A £400,000 car park improvement scheme would be undertaken at Cardiff Central, Chester, Hereford, Newport and Shrewsbury, with a new timetable introduced to allow for better performance and better connections. Arriva Trains Wales would also be required to abolish the £1 bike reservation fee and introduce better compensation schemes for passengers. Strategic Rail Authority Chairman Richard Broker said that the specification of the new franchise has been designed to encourage more people to use rail and places a strong emphasis on local accountability and management. As we will find out in one of my later episodes, a remaster of my Arriva Trains Wales video, the encouragement to make people travel by train came with huge consequences, with Wales and Borders handing over operations to Arriva Trains Wales on the 6th of December 2003. However, let's conclude on the three operators that we have looked at today: Valley Lines, Wales and West, and Wales and Borders. Firstly, Valley Lines. Despite having a very smart livery, in my opinion, as an operator they were far from ideal. They ran mainly old Pacer units, which were terrible even for the early 2000s. Terrible punctuality and reliability led to them being crowned as the worst operator in Britain, all whilst managing one of the smallest networks on the UK, with complaints rising up to 138% when they were in charge. Definitely a failed franchise, in my opinion. As for Wales and West, well, they made some key changes with the 158s, certainly improving them whilst their services were mainly reliable, being categorised in the B tier. Services were experimental, running to Waterloo, Portsmouth, Liverpool and Manchester, but this came at a cost of reducing branch line services, with overall Wales and West being a bit of a nothing operator, with very little information available regarding them online, as is the case for all three of the operators I've covered today. So, a failure? Well, probably not, but they made little impact on how Britain's rail network ran. The same could be said for Wales and Borders, who actually didn't do a whole lot. However, they were the first operator of the new joint Wales and Borders franchise, which has transformed rail travel in Wales, which we will see in the later episodes of this Wales mini-series. So, overall, I would suggest that Wales and Borders were not a failure, and they did build the foundations for the future operators in Wales, taking over from Central Trains and later First North Western, introducing their Class 158s, 153s and 175s into the Wales and Borders franchise, and showing glimpses of what a joint franchise could achieve. So then, the three operators all played their role in creating the Welsh railway network we know today, but in the grand scheme of things, this role was a minimal one, with most of the work being undertaken by the Strategic Rail Authority itself, and not the operators. Apologies for the slightly shorter video today. It was incredibly difficult finding sources and, well, anything to talk about regarding these operators, so I still hope you found it interesting overall. There will be much more to talk about in my later episodes on Arriva Trains Wales and Transport for Wales. If you remember any journeys on any of the operators mentioned today, then please do share your thoughts on them in the description below. Thanks so much for watching today's video, and a special thanks to my first class members, Callum Martin Bell and Crispin McKee, as well as my business zone members Andrew Bowen, Anthony Harris, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Connor Grieg, Craig Mitchell 43, Gordon Walker, Jay Teco, Lewis C21 and NJTE. You can get your name on this list from as little as £2.99 a month and help me to make my videos. I really do appreciate it. Also, thanks to everyone who let me use their footage for today's video. You can find their channels in the description or pinned comment. Once again, apologies for the shorter video, but I still hope to see you soon. Goodbye.